Hey guys, how you doing? How you doing? As you can see, I've brought my sister, my beautiful twin sister, back to the champagne room for another episode. You guys loved her so much. Loved our Q&A, so I had to bring her back ASAP. And if you haven't guessed, today's piece is about Africa. And oh my gosh, guys, we've got so much to be proud of. We really have so much to be proud of.
Yeah.
Our continent is so rich in culture, in food, in tradition, in heritage, in minerals, in people. From our gorgeous, dark, almost navy blue, black Senegalese men. We've got our Ghanaian men, all tall and gorgeous with their full beards, and Kanyezi is so convinced her husband is there. How you doing? We've got our tall, beautiful men in Nigeria with their rich and full accents. We've got beautiful women out in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Eswatini, here in SA. Guys, can we talk about how our music genre is taking over? Over. We honestly have so much to be proud of.
Yeah.
Can you start us off, because this topic came from somewhere?
So as Lala says, I was actually reading this book. I don't know if you can see it. I'm a Girl from Africa. So very quickly, it's a memoir, and it's a lady who's telling her story about as a child she grew up in Zimbabwe, and this is during the famine. And to cut a long story short, it's a great book though. You should read it. Her family end up helping her get to Europe. And she works hard. Eventually, she ends up working for the United Nations. Do you know what she actually did? She did that He for She campaign.
Oh my
You know the one with Emma Watson?
Yes.
So Emma Watson,
Oh, wow.
Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. Yes, so she was sort of like the face of that campaign. But our sister Elizabeth, another woman at the United Nations, but Elizabeth's brainchild was the He for She campaign.
Oh, wow.
So yes, African women were innovators.
It's happened.
So so her book is about her humanitarian efforts. It tells also a very personal story about her struggles and overcoming some of the hardest chapters of her life. But one of the things that touched me was her sense of it's not even, I think it's just love for Africa and love for her home. And she does a lot of humanitarian work on the continent, and she does a lot of work across the globe. But just this thing of being and identifying constantly, it's something her grandmother teaches her. Ugogo says to her, you're a child of Africa.
Yes.
There's a phrase they use, I don't know if I'm butchering it, but like mwana mwevu, which means child of Africa, child of the soil. So she keeps that, and that's one of the things that drives her. And I just love that she keeps coming back to Africa. And I think it was something we mentioned in our Q&A about, we definitely live abroad, but there's always this sense of giving back and bringing back to Africa.
Absolutely.
Even with our careers and what we do, a big part of it is, I just feel I'm so attached. I could live somewhere, don't get me wrong, but it would definitely be come back, or sort of an on and off thing, some months there, other months back home.
Yeah, and I think that pull and that desire to come back is because there's no denying how much of Africa is a part of our identity. We sitting here are African women. There's no other way to say it. Nkanyezi and I are African women, and again, there's so much to be proud of. And when I think of Africa and its identity, I always say to my friends, even Kanyezi, that as much as there are so many elements of culture and tradition that would only make sense that we kind of move on from, there's still so much about our culture and tradition, and when I say our, I talk about as Africa, that are so essential to who we are and how we are to conduct ourselves today as people. And I cannot help but mention African proverbs when I speak about African identity, because that really was a gift from our ancestors about who we are as a people, where we come from, and who we are to be going out into the world, the way we're supposed to behave. And what I love so much about this book is that every chapter starts with an African proverb. Kanyesi knows me and knows how much I love my proverbs, not just African ones, but I love proverbs. And the one that touched my soul with everything, I'm going to read it. Excuse me for that. I don't want to butcher it and then, it just be a whole type of disrespectful. But the proverb that I got here is, if there is cause to hate somebody, the cause to love has just begun. And that's a Senegalese proverb.
Yeah.
And that sent chills down my spine. I love it. And the funny thing is that when I sent the proverb to my mom and to one of my friends, both gave me very different interpretations, which were equally beautiful and profound. And I even had a different interpretation, being that we all belong to a higher power, being God. And because we belong to this higher power, we are all somewhat connected. And because we are connected, we have this duty, this responsibility to teach and show each other love, especially those who do things we may hate. It goes back to that the cause to love has just begun. If there is cause to hate somebody, the cause to love has just begun. So even if they do something we may hate, we have to start by showing them empathy and compassion and teaching them about love and what it feels to be loved so that they can learn that and they can give it to other people. Can you see how it all ties back into belonging, humanity, connection, being of one, being of the same soil, even if we have all these borders separating us? I love that, Ganyezi. That like touches my soul, because that was something even Ubab Shabalala taught us growing up. The whole idea of humanity and community. He always used to say there is no ways there can be this many people on the earth if we were all supposed to serve ourselves. We are a community for a reason. And Nkanyezi speaks about it a lot as well. Again, going back to the concept of Ubuntu, respect. Growing up, I used to think Ubuntu was a South African concept. It's not. The more I started traveling to different African countries, I realized how much Ubuntu exists in those different African countries, from Congo, Nigeria, Mozambique, Botswana, to Eswatini, to the Ubuntu is very much alive. Even the countries we haven't been to, because we make it a point to interact and engage with people from different countries, we realize how much of what they say and what they believe is very much what we feel and say and believe.
I think the minute you open yourself up to different people and different places, you actually realize you have far more similarities in common than you do differences. You know, you were speaking about proverbs, and I've always felt all cultures across the globe, you know, even in Asia, they have proverbs. And those are the things that not only, they point to our principles, right? They point to how we should be, how we should behave, the things that we should value in ourselves and other people. And I remember, I think Dad used to speak in Proverbs. I used to say that all the time.
Yeah, he did.
I think there was a video where Lala spoke about how he wasn't Christian or he wasn't religious in that way, but a lot of his philosophies and his beliefs were very, I mean, you could find them in the Bible.
Were very spiritual.
They were very spiritual. Thank you. It's one of those things where I think it speaks so much to not just the people that we are or the people we come from. It does. I feel like it opens us up, and you were saying it just now. It's sort of, we transgress beyond borders. You know, we're not just South Africans or Malawans or Zimbabweans. We're Africans. And I don't say that term in the sense that, you know, I think there's this very sort of monolithic perception across the globe that, you know, Africa is one place with one language, one culture, you know, one way of being. But it's such a, you know, excuse the cliche, but it's such a melting pot. There's so many. There's a spectrum. There are countries, there are cultures, there are languages, you know, languages that we have never even heard about. So it's like this, it is, it's a full spectrum. It's a full spectrum of differences and similarities more than anything.
And that is really and truly where I feel our pride should start. I've said it to Nkanyezi so many times that, you know, it's so unfortunate that we, not just as South Africans, as Africans in general, the more you just sit up and observe, it's almost there's almost this pressure for us to abandon what it is we know and who we are as a people to conform to and follow up with this global trend. And I feel like that is one of the saddest things we could do, because who we are as a people is a freaking trend. We are so amazing. No, we are so amazing. We are so amazing. We have so much to offer. I don't even feel like we have to put music out to trend. I think just how we are, how we look, how we speak, the way our continent looks, just the richness of our minerals, and as people, like that already to me is a trend. Our history is the trend. And if we could stop focusing on, and this is not everybody, of course, but just generally, if we could stop focusing on what's happening over there and focus on what's happening over here. What we have. I feel like it will cancel this whole issue of everybody else. And when I say everybody else, I'm talking about Europe and even the US selling our culture back to us as if it doesn't belong to us. You cannot sell me my belongings, sir.
One of my pet peeves.
I know you hate that. Kanyesi cannot even stand it.
It is one of my pet peeves. I mean, I was all here for Black Panther, guys. I supported it. I went out to watch it.
Souvenirs, dressed up. For a damn thing.
I'm not ashamed of being a bit of a nerd. I really am not.
Yes.
I fly that flag proudly. But I think that you have to unpack some of it, because that's where sort of international culture is in terms of understanding and interpreting Africanness, where, you know, guys, we've been having our own languages, we've been having our own way of dressing, we've been innovating, you know, and I think that it's always so deeply problematic to me when you get people from other parts of the world, especially the Western world, who love to come into Africa and make it seem like
they've discovered something.
Yeah.
Something that really existed. You found it here because it existed.
Exactly. You know what? One of the most sort of mind-blowing things for me, I think when it comes to history, it's always been this emphasis on sort of European empires and Asian empires. And when it came to Africa, it was about ancient Egypt, which, look, I have all respect for. Shout out to our Egyptian brothers and sisters. They are, I think they're almost glorified, all of them, not just Egypt, as being the only empires that existed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there was a time where I'd started reading a particular series and I wouldn't leave Lala alone about it.
No.
I had learned about African kings and queens.
Yes.
And, you know, empires that existed, the way that people had been, you know, developing in Africa. And unfortunately, we're kind of told, there's this narrative that our ancestors were slaves. No, our ancestors were enslaved. And their ancestors before that lived in a time where Africa was full of kings and queens. There were empires, there was trade, there was wealth, there was, you know, and I think that because unfortunately we don't know enough of
our
that
history,
and we don't know our history,
yes.
we almost fall for the trick, or we fall into the trap of accepting
that's just
external
all we
culture.
Were. Yes.
That, but also accepting that Europeans can sell us back concepts of African history or African. Please go and learn about it. Queen Amina, shout out to Nigeria. Queen Amina was a warrior queen, but at the same time, she established trade routes across different territories. And, you know, I think it leaves me speechless, quite honestly. Queen Sheba, the same thing of, what we understand as Ethiopia, for example, and just the sort of lineage of rulers that came from her son's bloodline. You know, there are so many.
Ushaka, all of them.
Exactly.
Yes.
King Musa, the Lion of Mali. You know, there are so many figures. Those are our ancestors. That's where we get it's rooted, our history is rooted in that. We're not slaves.
Roots. The movie Roots.
That was your fault. So, growing up, I think because our dad, Lala always had this very sort of outgoing, very out there personality.
Very.
You know, I think we already knew she was going to be in a sort of entertainment industry before she'd even started to really think about it. So anyway, our dad used to make us watch Roots. So for those of you who know Roots, you know that it's a 3-part series, but each part is like 3.5, 4 hours.
And it's so
but
deep.
it's long and it's deep and it's, you know. And I mean, look, I've always loved history, so I could sit through it most times. I'd fall asleep by the second tape. Sorry, Dad. But Lala.
Yeah, no,
Explain why we were forced to watch Roots.
I went through this phase of wearing my jersey on my hair. Like it was on my head, like it was my hair. And nobody could tell me to take it off. I used to ask my stepmother even for like pony ties. What are these?
Pom-poms, yeah.
Pom-poms and all of that. To tie my jersey in a way like it was my hair. I would walk around like this with my head doing this. Even when we would be watching Roots, I would sit there with my jersey on my head. And while they were talking, I was doing this with my jersey sleeves.
So, of course, Namsheng was not here for
Obam
that.
Shabalala.
Those things.
He would be looking at me from the corner of his eye like, Lala, are you watching? And I'm like, yes, excuse me, I'm watching. And when he would ask us at the end, like, what was that about? I'd be like, I don't know. I really don't get it. And he was just like, I don't care how this goes down. My kids are learning about their roots and its own roots. And it was only now older, yes, like 8 years where we started to really hold on and appreciate.
Yeah.
And doesn't that also make you think of the times when Daddy was around and how much history we took in just from conversations around a fireplace or at a family lunch where somehow they would talk about our family like Ugogo Nomkhulu and their parents and how they tie back into this and how they tie back into that and learning about the culture in the history of like the history and culture of Mhlongamvula and Madlagampisi and all of these places and you realize, oh my gosh guys, we really do have such a rich culture and heritage.
And that's always been the power, I think, of African history, is that it's always been a very oral thing,
deep.
you know, and it's one of those things where we come from that tradition of our elders used to sit us down and speak to us and tell us things. It's unfortunate, at a young age, you don't really know how to appreciate it, but I think with certainly for me, my appetite for history and for books came from our mother, who she's always had books. We grew up in a house where there were books, and I would sit there. This is that time where Lala says I was boring and I was a bit of a recluse. I could sit there and I could read. Our mom used to have these, she still does, she has these encyclopedias. And they look at different kind of histories and empires, not just in Africa, across the globe. And so we've always had that sort of, that
Kanyesi
thing
was
in the background.
very into it. I still remember when we were at the old house and then Kanyesi would open her window, our bedroom window, for fresh air as she's sitting at the table reading. And I'd be tearing down the driveway and around the corner on my bicycle. And every time I'd go past the window, I'd slap the window shut and I'd go. And I'd come back and be like, come, please mom, ask her to play with me. And eventually my mom would be like, Kanyesi, please can you go and play with your sister?
I told you, Lala was treated like the
freaking
last
out.
born. She was treated like Lala was high maintenance growing
No,
up.
I really
I'm not
was.
gonna lie, she
I
high
really was.
maintenance.
But I feel like those are the things. I remember Kanyesi even went through a phase speaking about history where she would go outside and she would start digging things up. Like she used to think she would find fossils and all of that.
That
and
was my dream. I wanted
really,
to be an
and she got me in it.
archaeologist.
I would come with my sticks and I'd also start carving things and pretend like, oh my gosh, Cody, look what we found.
found
Meanwhile, it was just like
treasure.
a freaking rock,
Like a rock,
or
or
something.
like a root
yes,
or something.
but I really want to make her feel like we were doing something
Yeah.
together. And really, that's, oh my gosh, Cody, it just brings down back so many memories. But then my question to you becomes, how does one go about preserving and celebrating their Africanness?
I think we're talking about it now. We have such fond memories of people in our family. And it's unfortunate that there's a particular generation, which is your father's. Okay, you can go as high as your grandparents.
Yes.
And then it's their generation. And then it's your fathers and uncles and aunts. And there's a particular generation who uphold it. And because we don't appreciate it, unfortunately, sometimes people pass. Like when Dad passed away, it was one of those things where
So much went with him.
So much went with him. That's it. We didn't take the time to really sit down and document it. And I think his older brothers and, the same thing there. So I think it's about holding on to those. If you're fortunate enough to have those storytellers in your family, hold on to those stories, guys. One of the things about oral history is, yes, there's a power in the sense that it's the spoken word, but it's never written down. And you get to a point where, yeah, sometimes someone passes away and you think, yeah, we should have recorded
them.
or we should have, So I think it's holding on to that tradition, and it's remembering those and also passing it down to your children. I'll do that for my kids when I have children, but pass it down to your children. So learning about your history, listening to people and their experiences, because there's nothing more powerful than knowing your roots. There's nothing more powerful than knowing where you come from. And an extension of that is to just open yourself up, guys. We live in a country where there are people from all kinds of walks of life, people from all over Africa. And you have to realize that we have more in common, more similarities than we do differences.
Absolutely.
So open yourself up to having conversations with different people. One of the things I love about, Lala's always had that very outgoing personality. So it's always made it very easy for people to talk to us and talk about. Remember, there was that spot of ours at Santon Square, where Lala.
Okay,
Stop. So, and I'd come back from I'd go to the ladies and I'd come back and there'd be random people sitting at our table. And I think, God, Lala, can you never just be me and you? But it was always very interesting people, and speaking to them, there was a guy from Kenya at some point, a lady from Namibia. There was...
I even attracted a guy from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, exactly. So... open yourself up, have those conversations. I think we have a very sort of aggressive, and I think it's also really stems from fear, and just fear of the unknown towards sort of other people outside, non-South African citizens, let me put it like that. But open yourself up and have those conversations.
Absolutely. And for me, thank you. I want to echo that. I've sat and I've spoken to a lot of people who say, I don't like this. I don't like those people. I don't like this food. And I'm like, have you met those people? Have you traveled? Have you tasted the food? And a lot of the time it's no, but I heard. Guys, the surest way to deprive yourself of experiences is not going out there and doing it yourself. Stop living vicariously through people. As Nkanyezi said, we happen to live in a country where there are so many different people from so many different countries in Africa. And there's just so much that we can experience, from the food, from talking to the people, learning about their culture, going to some of their events. My ex-boyfriend was from Ghana. You know what he did? He invited me to some huge Independence Day celebration of Ghana, where I got to taste their food and I got to dress up and I got to experience their culture and their tradition, and listening to what was being said at that celebration. Even with Nkanyezi, like she said, I've got the personality where I go out there and make a lot more friends. So you know what I did? I didn't ask questions. I didn't, are you willing to? I came home with jollof, with pounded yam, with egusi, with all of these things. And I was like, guys, come taste this. Come, like, there's no reason why we shouldn't. If you don't like it after the fact, that's fine. But we have to try it. At least you can say you tried. But traveling, you guys. Can I say there was a time when I actively said to Nkanyezi, we've been blessed. We have traveled from Italy to Paris to Switzerland to Miami to the Bahamas to all these places. I actively said to Nkanyezi, I now want to travel Africa and experience it more. So before I go back to Europe and to the US, I want to travel Africa more. Yeah. And I made it a point to pack my bags. My dad almost lost his marbles. I packed my bags.
He almost had a stroke. When Lala said, I'm going to Nigeria,
I was like, bye-bye.
Love you,
I'm
bye.
going for a month. Yeah. Please, if you need to call me, just call me if it's an emergency, but do not call me for any other things. I'm packing my bags. And I did. I packed my bags, saved money, booked hotels, booked my own, found friends there. But I literally went and stayed in Lagos for a month, traveling and exploring by myself. Yeah. And I was saying to Nkanyezi, it was so amazing and refreshing because there are so many cultural differences. I think there's also such a big difference from Nigerians living here, because in some ways they've come to adapt and conform, but to go back to their home where you see like, no, this is about us. This is our country. This is about us as a people. And you realize there's so many culture shocks. Like the first thing that I really was like, was listening to the way they speak. I always used to think a fight was about to pop. Like, I always thought the way they were talking, the aggression and the loudness, like people are about to start throwing hands. No, it's the way they talk, the traffic, the way people drive. I remember going to a wedding in Lagos and we were moving quite quickly with the traffic, and the way the circles kind of come into each other, a car started coming at us. And I remember the guy I was seeing at the time was driving, his friend was in the passenger seat, and a car started coming towards us. Did I not scream so loud, like we were dying? I actually thought I was going to die in Lagos, and they were like, what's going on? And I'm like, this car just won't stop. And they were like, no, it sees us, it's not going to hit us. It was the food, it was the experience. I know one of the things Connie would struggle with is how delayed everything is, but even that is such a different experience. Kinshasa was the same. The different cuisine, the learning French. Nkanyezi learned French before I did, and I was always like, no, it's okay. When I went to Kinshasa and I was the one like, hello, come, bonjour, come. In a taxi, can you call them? And they were looking at me like, ma'am, we are not deaf. We still don't understand what you're saying, until I had to come home and learn a bit of French. So get out there and experience things, you guys. It's not going to hurt you. Experience things. Experience people's travel if you can. If you can't travel, watch stuff. Read stuff. Is there anything you want to say in closing?
I think that you've kind of summed it up very well. Is just to open yourself up, try different things. Don't be afraid of the unknown. And I know it's sometimes being outside of your comfort zone is very
daunting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the first one to admit that, but one of the biggest, I will never regret traveling and going to different African countries. I will never regret, being open. And I know we sort of have very different personalities, but I appreciate sometimes her forwardness in certain situations, because it does. I mean, you get to learn about different people. So yeah, just be open and know that you are amazing. Your history is rich and beautiful and powerful, and that there is nothing wrong with being African. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I love Black is King. I love Black Panther, all that. But at the end of the day, you're like the real McCoy. You know what I mean? You're like the genuine article. You're not that diluted kind of. No. You are the source.
Thoroughbred. That's what you is. You thoroughbred.
Yes, you are. And celebrate that. Just be proud of that.
Guys,
just be proud of it.
Be proud of Africa.